And there you are. So today I wanted to get onto this camera. I've been really quite busy, and there's been a lot going on. There's a major transition taking place for me personally, so I'm just moving through that transition and doing what I do. Before I even begin, I wanted to send out extreme thanks to all those who have been with this message and with what we're doing for, I guess it's like 6-7 years now. And it truly means a lot. Like, I spent a lot of time just in, putting in work, like figuring out things, making sure stuff stays functioning, getting with certain people, politicking with those people, dealing with the haters and the trolls, all of those different dynamics. So a lot of times when I'm engaged in that, one, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to just jump on this camera, which I love to do. But more than anything, sometimes this gets my mind to just pause for a moment and say, hey, thanks. It means so much to be at this stage of consciousness, and all of what the infrastructure all the infrastructure that's been able to be developed is immense. And we're looking more and more towards incorporating, just what we do into everything that's going on in society to continue to make that change. But I know that there's thousands of you out there, and there's people that I don't even know that never make contact, but are truly there, contact on the physical level, but are truly there on the spiritual and the mental plane. So I wanted to say thanks so much, because it's valued. And all the people that are a part of this and listening to this, and even those in the future that haven't even got the message yet, we greet you and we say thank you, because the energy is felt now and here as long as we remain present. So today's conversation, what I wanted to talk about, I got the title, I said Hollywood hypnosis, but in this case it's Halloween hypnosis. And it's actually going to center around quite a few things that I've picked up along the way, especially within this last 3 or 4 months. And just some power tools that you'll be able to use to determine what's going on exactly in your reality. So the first thing that I really wanted to talk about was, just hypnosis in itself. Like, I guess before we even begin, why don't I just start off with giving you an idea of what a matrix really is, so that way, you don't steer off and become confused later on, because a lot of people say when they watch the message, sometimes they become a bit confused and have to go back over it several times. So we're going to look for maximum impact, and also we're going to try to do this as briefly as possible so you can get back to what you have to do. So when you're talking about a matrix, you're actually talking about an atom. So if you look into the structure of an atom, then you actually can determine what's going on in the matrix and how it's constructed, and what stage we're in right now. So this is probably not very big, but that's the center of an atom. The center of an atom is the proton and the neutron. And so let's just explain the identity of these forces, because each force is a frequency. Each frequency is a vibration, a sound, and that vibration and sound harmonizes with something, and it can connect to massive fields of data. It can connect to blueprints. These are basically the building blocks of the reality. And because everything is holographic, meaning each part contains either not only a part of the whole, but also contains the whole, then if you know how to look deep into something, then you can actually figure out the entire thing. And that is why the atom was looked into so deep. And make no mistake, even in the U.S., when they talk about the God they trust is the atomic bomb. It's the atom. And that's why even the biblical egregor, the biblical text, starts in with this character named Adam, and Adam's given all this power. So what they're basically saying is, for thousands of years, since we've entered into this out of the all-knowing state, I'll say, then fear has crept in through thought. And what thought does in creating this fear of the unknown, it creates to where we come up with a concept of external gods, gods that are not actually a part of us or inside of us or us, but actually hanging out somewhere in the sky or whatever. And that when you call upon these gods, then they respond and generally fix whatever problem that the person has. So in most cases, people have a problem with, let's say, raiders or warlords and even people next door. So they pray to their God to defend them and to protect them, and even sometimes obliterate this person that they don't like. And this is kind of the state that humanity has begun to slide into with the advent of thought and confusion and moving out of the all-knowing state. So what you then see is you see this volley of power going on back and forth between thought forms, because in every tense, we can fuel and create something when we put all of our energy and our ideas into it. And this is eventually going to get to how Halloween functions. So just so you understand, in every tense, one of the most minuscule things that we've ever been able to crack into and uncover is the atom. Now, of course, we're into nano, but for a while it was just atom. And when harnessing the power of the atom, it became the atomic bomb. And so how this translates over to the atom becoming God is actually that now, if, let's say, the United States as a whole is praying to a God to obliterate their enemies, they are praying to this atomic bomb because that's who they trust to keep them protected from these enemies. They're not into the whole side of the spirituality, the spiritual aspect of that. And the reason is because back in the old days, when spirituality was seen as the greatest power, that's what everybody dealt with, and that's how everyone functioned. That the more will that you can bring up, the more people that you can get to believe in that, the more you can create relics to focus people's energy into that, then that was the power system until the advent of the technological field of digging deeper into things like the microscope, you know, seeing all these different organisms, and then there's obviously weapons that are now developed that are just bacteria. And even looking deep into the brain and neurology, there's weapons developed so that mentally you can be put under attack. They call these psychic wars and silent wars, right? And so every time mankind has tried to search for a God, they are really saying they're trying to find a weapon. And that's the whole ideology of what you're dealing with in the Matrix. Now, the construct of the atom is actually how the Matrix is constructed, and I'm going to explain that really quick. That what you have inside of the atom is, in the nucleus, you have the neutron, okay? So what happens is that anyone's concept of this good supreme being that, you know, is the best one, the perfect one, they're actually thinking of the neutron. But the interesting thing about the neutron is it's neutral. It doesn't judge. So it's not taking one side or another. That's why people say, well, you know, if God exists, why is God not doing something about this? And it's because about this, the neutron is in the all-knowing state, so embodies all this. The neutron is around us at all times, but it is not doing what the proton is doing. And that's what's next to the neutron in that cluster is the proton. And how the proton is functioning is the proton is basically the embodiment of the masculine, or the divine masculine, if you want to say so, the positive force, okay? And in this positive force, there's a constant pursuit of penetration. Like all of the P words have to do with this protonic or propulsion force, okay? So it's actually what's sending out the energy. And the reason why it's sending out the energy is because what is rotating around it is actually the electron. Okay, and this could be referred to as the elect lady. Okay, and this is coming from different systems of people who've broken down this atomic structure as far as how it is related to occult matters. So these electrons, and this is a crude symbol because what you really get, meaning that my drawing is not that the best of it, but what you get is basically you get the atomic symbol, and I'll probably do that in graphics on the screen because my drawing is not going to handle it all, but that's easy. So what you get is this atomic symbol. Now the interesting thing is the electrons, which are negative, are actually making this motion around this atom. And what's occurring in that motion is attraction, basically the same attraction that the male has to the female, or anything that is on one side has to the other side. That's the easiest way to put it, because sometimes people think that when we're talking about masculine, feminine, or divine feminine and divine masculine, that we're talking about a male or a female, when males and females on this world actually have a male and a female side to their body. Right? So there's the spirit and there's the flesh, there's the left and the right. So we have masculine and feminine inside of us. So when we're trying to really look deep into these forces, what we really should do is just basically look back into like what is the force that exists behind female frogs, if we're looking for a divine masculine, female rhinos, you know, female spiders. It's not just a female human is what I'm saying. There's something else back there. So what we're finding is that through this dance, because that's what it really is. Through this dance around this center, what's created is a hexagon, right? And that hexagonal field is like a box. It's like a three-dimensional box. And inside of that box is where matter is formed. And that's the matrix. Okay, that's actually where you're at right now. You're inside of that three-dimensional box because of the ladies or the electrons, you know, the mistress, the maiden, and the crone, and the protons and their positive forces continuously in their yearning and dance for one another create a field around the neutron and the proton, and thus beget matter, time, all of what you're dealing with right here. And this is ancient knowledge. Like, this knowledge was pulled straight from Kemet. Everything that is in Kemet centers around this atomic knowledge. And actually, it even goes deeper, which is another course, because I've been studying after discovering the atom. I went deeper into the nano, because the nano particles are much more smaller. And to me, the nano is synonymous with the nana, as in the nonagon, which is or nanogon, which is 9 sides, which is the Enneagram, which is the system that the matrix was first on. And that actually brings us to what the name of that entire system was. The first matrix was called Eden, okay? In this sense of how you understand it in your language and how your interpretation and triggers are going on in your mind. Eden, the perfect garden state, to where there was harmony with the animals and the trees and basically a paradise. So that was the first matrix. Now, that matrix is still running. It actually still exists. Matrices that are perfect go on infinitely, just like the atom has an infinite energy system. It's perpetual. So what happened is that when invaders and, you know, bad Nasut Bittis or pharaohs and, you know, and Hyksos and sorcerer magicians will be a philosopher kings and all these people started getting this knowledge, then obviously there was an idea that was cooked up by many different societies. They were all kind of like in a race to finish the idea of creating not only a new god, which is what you see in today, like everyone in these different nations has different gods, and those gods go to war, and they call that the war of the gods. But the truth is, it's actually the war of the technology and the building of things that can destroy the other person, and that's actually what the race is. So now what you're dealing with is matrices inside of matrices, because what these societies had done is they took this knowledge, first just the knowledge of the masculine and feminine attraction with one another, and nowadays it's like the epitome of that. It's like everything you look at, there's either some booty or some abs, and it's either gonna pull or push in a certain direction to draw you closer towards whatever it is this person or this company is trying to get you to buy or patronize in. And the larger that these countries, companies become, I mean, the same thing, right? Because companies have the same rights as citizens, according to things like the Bill of Rights and, you know, the constitutions and how all that's put together, then when you have a massive company, what you actually have is you have a massive egregor, or eidolon, or a thought form that can move, that can think, not only with the components that are actually inside of it, but also from a spiritual level, from an atomic level, from different levels that it continues to develop itself. So let's say in the average company, you don't just have people who know how to operate computers. You have people who know how to clean bathrooms. You have people who have knowledge that they're not even using in the company, but they're still yoked with the company. They're still in agreement with the company. So that knowledge is accessible by the egregor. You have, especially in very complex firms such as Merck, Pfizer, you know, you have mega minds in there that have studied every single chemical and molecule, and all those belong to different groups. So what those groups do in many respects is they create their own matrix and their own nucleuses. And when they sell something to you, or they try to get you to buy something or theirs, or become a part of what they're doing, it actually takes a form of hypnosis in order to be able to accomplish that. Meaning that even the simple act of a person liking something and being attracted to something is actually a form of hypnosis in one way or another. It's a form of self-hypnosis. So obviously there's levels of hypnosis that are much more aggressive than others. And in fact, in the society that we're living in, the Western world especially, their form of hypnosis is so strong, it has the ability to not allow anyone that is involved in the structure that doesn't start making an attempt to break out even know what's going on. And the best example of this, I believe personally, is actually Christianity, because for people who really have studied Christianity and really got involved in it and been in that state of mind and actually made it out of that, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Because what happens is, while you're involved, you can find, through this convincing and this repetitious nature of programming that's being used, you can find yourself not even questioning at all some of the most simplest things to understand when you just have common sense, such as, if God's so great, God's so powerful, and God doesn't like sin, etc., why doesn't God just end the whole thing, right? So then there's this whole long story of why God won't do that. Simple stuff like, if Adam and Eve were the first person, but then Cain went off to the land of Nod, as it says in Genesis, and married a wife, who was this woman? So there's tons of things, right? So you won't even see these things at all, though, or even think to question these things when you're involved in just the seance, okay? And because that's really what's going on. When you're involved in the singing, that's the beyonce, okay? People need to understand what these names means. You know, when you're involved in this ceremonial aspect of tying yourself into something and believing in something, and you're using common things that make you feel good anyway, like dancing, singing, being with friends, being with people that you can connect with. And if you mistake that, how that's achieved is through this common integer, and that means that common integer is true because it causes that, then you've kind of went off in your own thought, in your own gander, right? Because truly, each experience has to be seen almost as separate. And each thing has to be examined. Okay, I like this connection with this person, and bam, I like the ideology of some of the people around. Let me study the doctrine. Major flaws in the doctrine. Maybe I should go and tell them about this. So it's like methodically you take yourself through this whole thing before you commit to something. But again, that never happens. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because we're doing the same thing now, but just on different levels, meaning that not questioning exactly what's going on in the root to what is bringing and funding and driving the energy into this thought form and this egregor, right? So that's one form of hypnosis. So those people who've made it out, now they're able to look back in, and then they're looking and they're like, man, that's crazy. Why would I believe something like that? Then they even see, you know, the whole slavery thing and how it's necessary that, you know, religion become the opiate for the masses to give them this hope that something's going to take place that never actually occurs, that, you know, this guy Jesus hasn't been back for the last 2,000, 3,000 years, yet people are still waiting, and their lives only last 72 years. So all of this stuff doesn't even make any sense to the mind that's out of that hypnosis. But remember, the mind who is in the hypnosis, they don't see it. So that's the thing, is what's said is, in the crazy person's mind, they're totally sane, okay? So we too have driven ourselves into some level of insanity, multiple levels of insanity, because every time that we go into using and operating things that are related to this current matrix, which is technologically strong, we almost, again, put ourselves under some level of hypnosis. And if then the hypnotizer doesn't have our best interest in mind, right? Because some people have used hypnosis as a way to work through trauma, right? So this means that they have to trust this person that is going to put them under this hypnosis and help them walk through this trauma, and so they can release themselves of this bondage. But if you're dealing with Sony or you're dealing with CNN, you definitely can't trust them to wake you up out of the matrix or the trance, the sub-matrix or the trance that they put you in. So thus what we find then on the planet is actually a couple things going on. One, a non-realization of how much power you truly have, how you can literally project the reality in front of you as you walk through it, right? That's the level of the power that we're talking about with your form of consciousness, which has no limits because it's all-knowing. And I'll explain that very briefly, the all-knowing state. How do you know that you have it? Well, just recently there was a video circulating around about a guy who woke up from his coma, and now he's speaking Spanish, right? But this is not the first time. They had another one where a guy, or excuse me, a guy had woke up, he was speaking Mandarin. And just recently, one of my friends, she told me about another lady who woke up and she was speaking Sanskrit. And none of these people knew these languages before. And then there's even more to this. There's like savants and those kind of people who, when they have a certain problem with their brain, and then all the energy is then diverted into another area, then they are able to extremely excel in that area, but sometimes not in other areas. So, and that's of course a savant. So what we're getting to here is that inside of our consciousness, inside of the nucleus of who we are, there's a neutron or all-knowing neutral state. And the reason why I'm here on this conversation with you today is because I want to tell you that what's going on in the matrix right now, all these biblical predictions and biblical traditions and all this stuff is actually a clock. That's why Zodiac and all this stuff is set up like a clock. And this clock is ticking towards certain events. That's why it's rather easy after a while when you understand the mechanics of things, of how to predict the future and how also to avoid getting involved in futures that others are predicting. And then what I mean by that is that, see, it gets to a point to where it's not just human beings doing this to you. It's not just companies that are doing this. There were other life forms that were much more vast in their intellect, and they still tapped into thought and then got into the whole fields of intelligence and technologies and all that, and then began to develop these systems, right? And one of those particular egregorian groups, okay, because that's what you're dealing with, is the Luciferian group, okay? And these are the terms in which you would understand it, because, you know, depending upon what planet or parallax or state of consciousness that you're on, there's a cognate for this form of being and this form of activity. And what I'm talking about is those who manipulate with light, because that's what a Luciferian is truly doing on all levels, meaning that they're utilizing light, and the maximum of that light is actually the sun. And refracting the diamonds or tetrahedrons of the sun. That's why Lucy with the sky, in the sky with diamonds. Okay, anyone who's been on LSD can see the geometric fields that are being sprayed into the reality from the sun. And what that is Luciferian, because it's the use of shaping, forming, and fashioning light. Luciferians, they tap into that energy and they refract that energy, meaning they know how to use mirroring, symbolism, different things in order to trigger various aspects that then bend the light, which makes it look like it's not really is. So that's why it takes a third eye at times to see exactly what's going on. All the eyes need to become singular, because other than that, you get more or less what we would think is a 3D effect popping out in us, like anaglyph glasses. And then much of what's being projected is just two-dimensional symbols that our consciousness is making 3D. And then this builds an illusory plane around us that in every sense to how much you need to pay attention to what's going on and how much you need to get yourself to another level is very real. But as far as the magnitude, just in sheer energetic measurement, the magnitude of what this matrix has compared to what there really is in the all-knowing, it's virtually illusionary, meaning it doesn't even register on the meters almost. And that's what's meant by it's an illusion. And, you know, those are things that we need to get very clear. That's measured on an energetic scale. So personally for you, it takes a little bit less than 3.5, between 0.5 to 3.5 volts to run you in your reality. Okay, that's as much as coming off you in this particular field, the electron fields. Now, as far as, so then what I'm saying is that, so where is the rest of your energy going, right? And this then gets you into what the purpose of hypnosis actually is. Then what occurs is actually every single thing that tries to get you to get more attached into the matrix, and this becomes very tricky to explain. It begins to pull a certain level of energy from you, right? Because it's taking your perception, it's taking your focus. So in every tense, you have to basically police the situation all the time, making sure that you're focusing on things that are also going to build your energetic center. Because when you're pushing out focus, you're definitely pushing out energy. But when a person is, let's say, watching tons of videos, like, you know, the internet is the internal network. It was designed to create a matrix within a matrix. That's what that is. So when you decide to go into the matrix and go into the web, you also have to be very cautious of not getting trapped in the web, right? Because then you're just losing current energy, time. And you may be watching somebody's video, somebody's cat singing and playing the piano or something like that, and then you look up and you lost time. And then as far as reciprocation is concerned, while you may have got an immediate moment of somewhat of a virtual enjoyment, overall, you didn't gain anything. In fact, you lost something that, in a matrix like time, you can't even really get back, right? So every 2-3 hours, you won't get that back unless you figure out the secret to time. So what we're talking about here is, to not make this complex, is that the Luciferian egregors, which is basically Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and as we talked about in this conversation, the whole Halloween, religions, all of this stems off of a few dynamics. And so to simplify it, it stems off of, first, the concept that you don't know everything already. So how this works then is that means you must go out and learn it. But with as much information is now revealed on the internet, and as much that different people have to say about so many different conversations and all these different books that are coming out and these techniques and these new ways, how does a person absorb all that information in that busy schedule that they have, right? So I'm going to show you something. So, we have 24 hours in a day, but we spend half of those basically sleep almost. Okay, so almost half sleep. The other thing is that once you come out of the sleep, how much time do you really get by yourself anyway? And this is a thought, like how much time do you really spend by yourself without somebody saying, hey, I need this from you, or you feeling like you got to go and do something, or now that you have this time, now you can do X. So a lot of times you don't really spend time with yourself, so you would think. But the truth is that actually most of the time that you have, you spend by yourself. And that's either on the toilet, in the shower, or sleep. So if you add the time up with the toilet, the shower, and the sleep, you actually spend at least half of the day by yourself. So this means that if you don't have things that are going to excel and allow you to focus on you during those times, including your sleep, because you can listen to frequencies, you can get yourself prepared to go into a journey and travel while you're asleep. So then you won't have any time if you don't take that. And if you're imagining that during the day, especially for the average person who's, at least stabilizing themselves in this matrix financially, if you're imagining somehow during the day that you're going to have time for being able to get in depth like you need to get in depth with yourself and tap into your all-knowing with all these different things going on, you need to utilize the toilet, the shower, and the sleep to be able to do that, because there is no other time. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to focus on about how to get out of the hypnosis, okay? So what I was explaining to you is that, see, how the Luciferian egregors work is that obviously there are tons of secret societies that are out there, more than most people think. And in fact, since most companies operate on the same mechanics as Luciferianism, the biggest secret societies are the ones that are out in the open that people don't know are societies. So when you look at major companies in many contexts, those are secret societies because you don't know who the shareholders are, the chief shareholders, and the people who are actually conducting, how they're going to keep selling you this product so that they can keep their egregor alive. See, because the thing is, it's not just that fat cat that's on the top with all the boats and the yachts and $14,000 a day on the suites at Four Seasons and all that. It's not just that person. It's also the ideology that the entire life form itself, the employees and all that, make up one gigantic body. So even the head of that body does not want to fire 2,000 or 3,000 of its employees that it has under its control and has at its disposal to continue to spread its tentacles into the matrix and keep creating more sub-matrices through the realities that the people who work in those organizations create with their own consciousness and their unity and being inside of that body, right? Like that's the only time people really work together is when they get to work. Then when they leave and they go home, then they start arguing with the people who truly care about them, people who are preparing the food for them, people who are giving them real knowledge about how to get out of the matrix. But that's because everything in the matrix works in action and reaction, proton and electron. So that means that if a person's having a horrible day at work and they're just made to suck it up and keep doing what they do, then all that's going to come out when they get to the house. And it's the same thing. Like I can give you another simplified version of it with the music industry. See, they came out first with the good music, the Temptations, and then finally, you drive down the road, you get, Brian McKnight, and then you get, Boyz II Men, and now every culture has their version of these same kind of characters. And then all of a sudden, now people start getting tired of that, and then the kind of the rap rock moves in, which gives a nice, the R&B / rock moves in. That's kind of like the Prince. That's kind of like even even some of the stuff Mike was on. And then it makes this bridge and fusion between the two, and then rap is born. And then rap starts taking things down to where it is now. Everything is facts. So facts are what you see going on, not what people intended. Just like, you know, with Black Lives Matter movement and the Occupy Wall Street movement, the facts are not what people intended, but what happened. So like, where's the Black Lives Matter movement now with their progress on just the overall goal of getting people to have more freedom? They've become basically an outlet to be utilized to catalyze more hatred. That wasn't their intentions, but that's what occurred. Same thing with the Occupy Wall Street movements. Because there was no plan, there was a great idea how to use social media to get everyone together and to create these groups and, you know, these awareness marches that would appear all at one time, and people would leave the job. But then when they would get out there and talk, they didn't have a plan. So people were dispersed after that and also disheartened that they can do anything. Same thing right now with the Native Americans and the water situation and them building these, you know, pipelines, etc. So those people are out there struggling, and the most everyone can do is put it on Facebook and put it on Instagram. But can they really show up in astral bodies or helicopters or whatever they have as their form of defense and shield the situation? No. Because hypnosis has people believing that if you don't tap into your all-knowing and create your field around you, right? It has people believing that if they don't, that they don't need to do that, right? And that if they don't do that, then they can go right into any of these situations where you have these egregors that are already built, and then now a person who doesn't even understand the concept of that is going to try to go against something like that, right? And it could even be one of their own people after a while. You're going against an egregor. It could even be their lawyers are in the same tribe as the people who are actually complaining, right? So this happens to at least melanin. It happens to melanin-dominant, melanin-recessive people alike. When you go against the man, you may find that it's a black person on that other side that you're now going against, because their concepts and their ideologies are not harmonic with what you're trying to experience in your reality. And this is the matrix, but it's not just the matrix. These are sub-matrices, okay? So what matrices are then, if you really want to get into what we're dealing with here, is matrices are basically hexagonal mazes, okay? And that's why in the series Westworld, I believe in Lost, Pan's Labyrinth, all these different movies are basically showing that inside of the consciousness, the brain, the head, which actually comes from Orion. They showed you in Egypt that all the parts of the brain are actually from Orion. That's they gave them their mind. So basically what's inside of the mind has receptors that directly receive commands and directly receive transmissions from all of these programming points that are out in this, what we're calling space, right? Which all this stuff is just a holographic morphogenic field, right? So let's simplify this. What I'm saying is everything is vying for your attention. And then if you don't know how to direct your laser and your beams and your focus properly, then you can get sidetracked and start looking into these mirror worlds. And then get into a level of hypnosis that, despite you're in the reality and you're around people and all this, doesn't mean that it's actually real. Because in each person, they're experiencing the consciousness the way they experience it based on who they are. So this means that if for some reason they come unhinged, and then somehow we're imagining that they're thinking like everyone else, then we're mistaken. In fact, nobody is actually visualizing the world the same way as you. And that's why when you shut down, when you close your eyes, you go to another space, or you feel what you feel from going into wherever you go. I don't. You see what I mean? So basically what I'm saying is the central character in this entire theme is you. What a Gregorian consciousness and concepts are designed to do is to divert your attention from that. And that's what technology also is really about when it's used in this malevolent way of basically just making you pay attention to it. And this is why when something happens now, it's very easy for it to affect the matrix when it comes across the media channels, not because this is the first time any of this happened. Things even worse happened 120, 130 years ago. Like, look at the slave trade. You know, look at what happened over there in Poland. Look at all these different things that have gone on. But the thing that we didn't have was the internet, or this component that was allowing us to not only view everything that was going on in the world, but also comment on it. And also even connect with other people that were involved in it. We didn't have that unifying component anymore. So let's go back a little bit, because there's one more secret that I'm going to reveal here. And that actual secret has a lot to do with the animals. Because when you really want to understand where you come from, since I now know where nothing comes from, when you take everything back, like I said, if you take the human lineage back, you get to 2 human beings, okay? That's math. So you could say then, to solve the riddle for yourself, that, and then before that, there's just the all-knowing state. So the all-knowing state doesn't exist with the frequencies, it doesn't exist with the languages, it doesn't exist in thoughts, there's nothing to think about. See, the thing is that when you're in all-knowing, then you're not in fear, because you know what the outcome is going to be. Imagine a person in all-knowing state with fear. It doesn't make any sense. You already know what's going to happen. You already know how to deal with every single situation. There is nothing but neutrality and calm in that kind of being, whoever's able to achieve that. So this is the important thing, because the only opposite to that then is actually being in the chaos. And that's why the matrix is referred to as the chaos. And how the chaos really creates itself is through the fear, as I talked about earlier, of not knowing what's going to occur next. And that's exactly how the world has been hemmed up right now. It doesn't know, what's going to happen when this person gets elected, and, what's 2020 going to be about? Is that going to be in the world? Some people say in the world is going to be in November. So it's going to be a constant that, if you want to know why that's always going on, why people are always doing that. There's going to be a constant that going on as long as people rely on their thoughts to try to figure it out. Because thought, again, when you're thinking, means that you don't know. And then when you don't know something, then you put yourself into this fear. And then fear eventually leads to this scarcity, because there's a fear of death. So that means there's a fear of time running out. And this time, which is current, which is the only true currency, the concept of time, which is fictitious, right? Except for those under those who have been hypnotized. This concept of time then creates an idea of scarcity. Well, there's simply not enough. There's not enough time. So I need actually more current. I need more money, because now time becomes money, as they say in the business world. I need more money so that I can buy more time in this space, so that I can get the things that I want to enjoy in the time that I've been allotted. And if I'm afraid if I don't get that, because my time is going to be over soon. This is in the mind of a person who's extremely hypnotized by the matrix, the sub-matrix system, right? So then, as this goes on, then of course they're willing, just like the companies now, to do anything to get ahead. Even if it means selling a bad product that's not good for you. A product that's got radiation coming all out of it and is going to burn all the cells in your head. Selling you a screen before the research is done about how the screen is going to affect your eyes. Giving you a chair before the research is done that figure out that you should be really standing. Giving you a medicine before the researchers found out that you can even assimilate that kind of mineral in your body in that format. Basically giving you anything that they can give you in order to attract your attention and your power and your energy. And that's sub-matrix stuff. Then you have behind this matrix, now again, the businessmen of Wall Street, and these people are not the first people to discover the matrix. They were in the blueprint of it so they can create their own. There were entire empires, okay, where they had sorcerer kings and sorcerer queens that put the entire nation under trance. And those empires are still there. They're still laying in sub-matrices where the spirits, and this is how you explain, where is everybody? Everyone is actually here now, either in their animal form, their insect form, or their human form, or in some form or another. There's a countless amount of things that are here. And just like when we first discovered the microscope, and this is what I keep telling people, like, you got to realize that the Royal Societies and all these groups, they went on, they found out this knowledge. And where they have you at is still thinking we're still trying to find life in space, like since 40 years, 50, about 40 years, I've been hearing this story. I'm not that old yet, but 30 years at least, right? And we haven't found life yet. And, you know, all these different, you know, we don't know who God is. And, you know, these arguments about science. And, you know, now it's a flat earth. Now it's a round earth. Now it's a, and all it is this continuous, hey, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Why don't you think about it? Right? And then what that does is when you give it the jewels, when you give it the energy and you start thinking about it, you start going down that path. Okay? But unfortunately, if that path leads to a dead end, now you're stuck at a dead end in a maze. Now, every path going through the maze looks like it leads out of here. But truly, the only one that knows the way out is you, because the way out is the way in. And where that is, because you're the only one that can hit the switch. I can explain to you about it, but you have to hit the switch. It's in your all-knowing state. And how you know it exists is because you have people that have tapped into that, and then all of a sudden, it just starts flowing from them. Some call that the zen or the zone. So one final thing here, since the clickbait was, as they say, was Halloween hypnosis, it's necessary that we talk about it. So then, if what I'm saying is true about these sub-programs, sub-hypnosis matrices, what is Halloween then? Okay, and now you're starting to get an idea of what's going on. Halloween then would be run by a goddess. I believe it's G-O-T-A-S, a goddess egregor. Okay, and what that is a malevolent thought form. Like the idea is not even the concept of peace and to assist you with balance and to help you heal and to give you pleasure and passion and energy and bliss. It's all the exact opposite. It's like taking a trip through a programmed game of destruction, right? But of the most horrific kind, a complete dismemberment and a degradation to who you are as a human being. To dress up as some dead ghoul, especially when death is not even real, and to put that into the mind of your children. Okay, to put that into the mind of your children and to authenticate and write it off and to sign it as their parent that it is okay for them to accept in their mind and in their consciousness not only death, but an after death that is distorted and demented. Okay? And then you start asking yourself why you can't get ahead and why you can't get to the next level when you invest all of your energy and you encourage others to invest their energy too into something that completely obliterates their consciousness and fills their minds with phantoms, so they become haunted by illusionary beings and they begin to resonate with egregors that have always brought about destruction, things that can never be destroyed because they just lie out there waiting for someone to tap into that resonance and that frequency, right? So that's actually what's going on behind the curtain. Is the inventors of Halloween are the inventors of the darkest states of consciousness in the hypnosis that you can ever go down the road of. And yet one sends their kids down the road. Notice how it works. They send their kids down the road. And actually the one who wins the Halloween costume is the one who, or costume contest, is the one who dresses more ghoulish. The one who dresses with the most blood and the most carnage going on. You see? And then just like some of the master teachers, like Layla Africa talks about, you know, you go and you jump on this roller coaster and you go and get the crap scared out of you. But what do you think that does to your organs? What do you think that does to your body? Okay, so you got the Halloween thing. I don't need to drill it into you anymore. Stay away. Now, the last thing is the deepest story, because the story of the animals actually gets into why Lucifer was given the symbolism of the pentagram. Okay, and now we've at least been able to connect the pentagram to Phi, or Pi, the bodies. We've been connecting it to the bodies, even the inverted pentagram being the body upside down, right? But of course, that's just when you're thinking about it. When you know about it, then you know that the pentagram is the spell. That's why the witches wear the pentagram. Okay, and they say, oh, you know, that's their most powerful symbol. So the pentagram, you know, in the all-knowing stage, the pentagram is actually the spell itself. That's why the witch's symbol is the pentagram. And obviously the New Age movement has come along. They're like, well, the pentagram means this and the pentagram means that. And all that is true. But what they're explaining is actually all a part of the spell. Because what the pentagram is used for by Lucifer is to shape form and fashion light, to basically carve light. So the bodies are actually carvings of light. And what makes the physical body is the coagulating of that light so that it becomes dense on an atomic level. And then that forms a physical body, while there's actually a light body, a chakra center system that actually is projecting and refracting light in order to keep things around you and you static, meaning actually in appearance into the three-dimensional matrix, okay? So how the pentagram then is it's the spell. So what the spell does is it actually makes you see things not like it truly is. And this works on all levels. But the most impacting level is actually what you see in the people that are around you, that you actually don't see their animal body or their power animal. Okay, and that's what it's called now in the New Age movement. No, you're a power animal, right? Because the knowledge is just like the Native Americans, you know, could turn themselves into other life forms. They could turn themselves into the totem animal, they could turn themselves into the buffalo, they could turn themselves into the eagle. And the reason why they can do that is because those are the ancestors, okay? Like when you're talking about, see, we're not talking about cats and dogs and pigs. Okay, because those are the domesticated. That's thousands of years in the matrix in domestication. What we're talking about are the original beings that have all these senses. So now if you notice how, like a jaguar even, or a lion and a tiger even, the level of prowess that you're talking about, the level of power, the level of sense, the eyes, the hearing, like all of their hypersensitivity, you know, you're walking miles away. The plant systems, okay, too. The insect system, talking about all life forms, animals, plants, everything that's here that has life in it is actually the ancestors. The big key to this and how you begin the major process of deprogramming and dehypnotizing yourself. So what we're dealing with here then is that how this all works is that the more you believe that the reality is real, and this is how you can learn how vicious this cycle really is. This has nothing to do with compassion. In a tense, this has nothing to do with any of those mechanics. This is just how your consciousness functions, right? And I'm going to tell you a couple secrets here. I'm going to tell you about the sentinel. I'm going to tell you about solidification. And I'm going to tell you about malleability. And let me see, sentinel, solidification, and malleability. Okay, so what we're talking about here is that now we have all these words then that, like I explained illusion to you earlier, illusion should be governed by how much energy or wattage is incorporated into something to determine how close it is from being dense or cloud-like, okay? So that would be like another definition of illusion. But we don't have any other words. Just like I said in that if you're trying to do this in other languages and you're trying to bring this knowledge and message, you'll find they don't have the words for what you're talking about. So English is like that too when it starts to be, when you start to try to explain some of the much more deeper things, because it leaves a person in this like, huh? I don't see how that works. And one of these is about the more energy or belief that you put into activities that go on in the matrix, the more it impairs you from being able to change in the event something doesn't go the way that you want in that activity for you to change it. Okay? So this means that the environment that's going on around you, if let's say you lose a loved one, or you lose a job that you really need, or someone betrays you, what that actually does is it solidifies more for you that the matrix that you're living in is actually real, because the experience, it tapped into a side of you that is very real. Okay? And then what happens is the more of your energy that you divert into that, when you want to change it, because it has so much power, it's now solid. And that's what I mean by solidification. And the more solid something becomes in your consciousness, you don't have the power to mold it anymore. It becomes basically like stone. So how you do this then, the technique is that when something is going on, like things are getting on your nerves and stuff is happening, keep a mindful tense if you expect to change whatever is going on, how much energy you actually give to it. Because that's the energy that you're going to be going against, is how much energy you are putting into it. Okay? So when you start adapting this state of mind, I mean, it gets almost to the point where it's impossible for other people, if they saw what you were capable of doing, when you start realizing the keys to these matrices and how they work. And how, like, if something goes on, like you're about to get, you know, a job. Like somebody asked me this question the other day, and I answered it for them. I wanted to share it, but I just didn't have time yet. But it was about, they asked me why when they want to go, when they're about to get something that's going to change things for them, like let's say a new car, a new job, or, you know, this business idea, this loan, etc., then it ends up not going through. And time again, it doesn't go through. And I explained to the person, because there's different mechanics to those kind of things. One, that first you should always know that there's a diametrics or opposing field to anything that you're trying to do. That's just how the matrix works. With every action, there must be a reaction. So you want to not let that diametric force know what you're attempting to do. And you often do that by, one, overexcitement. When you're overexcited, you send these frequencies out that now must be responded to. So then the sentinel actually sends back the corresponding opposite force to whatever you're excited about. So the easiest way to get excited and to not be detected is to actually do it all within and have that calm, all-knowing peace and let it fuel that, especially before it's about to happen. And then the second thing is that, because I call that, when you get excited and everything about it, I call that eating the energy before it even arrives. It's like, you know, you just, oh my goodness, girl, I'm going to get this car and we're going to be out. We're going to be having fun. Finally, I'm glad that my credit, I don't know how they approved it, but they did. They called me yesterday. And then, you know, 2 weeks later, when you're like, hey, what happened to the car? They said, girl, did you know that they canceled my credit card? And then they found out. And then they're wondering, well, why that happened? Because you ate it already. And on top of that, here's another thing. Now, if you didn't set off the alarm, sometimes, and actually more often than not, if you tell someone that has nothing to do with it, if you tell them about it, then their energies, their hypnosis egregors, and all the stuff that people have, the baggage, that's what the real baggage is. It detects it. And it's like sending its own force, because in many times when you tell somebody that you're going to another level, don't be surprised if they're not happy about you going to that other level deep down, but on the outside they're like, oh my goodness, I'm so glad. And they're like, I can't believe I'm doing way more than her. I look better than her. Why is she with him? And you know, or the guys, I don't even understand. They should have picked me for the draft. I mean, I'm running faster. And it's, so you would be surprised, but then when the guy comes up and says, oh man, I made the team. Yo, man, bro, you did it. And he's like, man, how? So this is what's going on until humans figure out themselves and what they're doing and how they're holding themselves into these prisons and prisms. Then, you know, this will continue to go on. It's basic. You shouldn't, if you're catching feelings about it, like, right? And if you feel like you're upset about that, then that's because you bought into the whole thing. And that's what I mean, you know, when you buy into it, then your currency is out there, and then now you feel like you need to get paid. And then what happens if you don't have any currency to draw from anyway, then now it's going to be on credit. So the thing is what I'm saying is, with mechanics like that, about getting things accomplished, you have to know this kind of stuff if you're expected to make major things happen. Because when something major is about to happen, you just, except for people who are directly involved in it, until it manifests, because there's diametric forces that want to prevent that from happening, because they are designed to just be the opposing force to whatever you're trying to do. So you can make your yoke easy and your burden light by not doing that. This also is basically the same concept of lucid dreaming. When you're in the lucid dream, then you're literally doing this technique of where you don't want to grab too much onto the dream, because then you'll wake up. And then on top of that, you don't want to fall too, get too relaxed, because then you'll sink into the dream. You'll fall asleep. So you're kind of like riding this wave. It's the same thing in life. In your experiences, you got to just ride the wave, because other than that, then you put too much energy into the illusion. And then when it comes time for you to change it, because it's still a morphogenic field, most people don't understand the keys to manifestation, but this is one of the major ones. When it comes time for you to change it, then you can't change it. So that's it. That's all I have for you today. It's just because this is packed with knowledge. It gives you the ability to use the key, the atomic structure, to identify the different thought forms and energies moving throughout the reality. It puts you in the know about what the Luciferian context truly is, for better or for worse, or for good or for bad, because it contains all of those components. The sheer manipulation of light and the consciousness, those people's consciousness that are susceptible to light, which is those who have that Orion template within their skull, which is just one part of the physical body. That's why some people say, well, you know, I'm trying to come from the heart. I'm not using my mind anymore, because those fields oftentimes are hacked. Most people's thoughts are riding across the same frequencies or hertz that their radio is on. Like, people don't even connect that, you know, when you see the radio dial 107.1, 92.5, you know, all those popular radio stations are in most cases moving across the same hertz that your thought is. And if you don't believe that, then you just don't understand. You haven't studied, because that's how invisible conversations that you call telephone, cellular phone, even pictures and data can get from your device, which has no visible cord, to another person's device through the air that they have no visual cord on either. How does that work? And it's because it's moving over frequencies and wavelengths. Those frequencies and wavelengths are everything. The study of manipulating frequencies and wavelengths is Luciferian. So it's not that any of this stuff, you know, they put the big face on it, they put the dark demon on it. And the reason is because anything that they hide behind a monster, anyone who has fear will not go through there. And if they have tapped into this Halloween and, you know, they're all scared and they're going to these spooky houses and they're on these crazy rides, they're very familiar with the egregor and its fearful context. So the next time that they're triggered by something that, you know, Freddy Krueger or whatever in their dream, then they have in this disruptive state of consciousness going on that they have a hard time getting free from. So just remember what all this stuff is connected to, how you can change it, moving into your all-knowing state, beginning those practices now. It's not going to happen overnight. Don't ask me or send me text about how to do that, because you will be asking me to teach you how not to think. You see what I mean? So all this should come intuitively, and just remember the reason why you know it's there. Instead of you know it's there. It's not you have to think about how to get there. The reason how you know that it's there is that many people have gone into states of consciousness where they've been able to pull entire volumes of information out of nowhere. But guess what? That nowhere is around everything, and you can tap into it. Wholeness and balanced vibrations. Have an amazing time. Have an amazing infinity. I will be back with you when I can. For all those, again, that have been supporting and with their information, their likes, you know, their comments, etc. Thank you so much. I would also say that, hey, I've tapped it. So for those wondering what happened to the beard, I had to go to a job interview. Like, I have to keep this going. And I would just tell you, like, if you're out there and you have resources and you've still been just twiddling your thumbs, wondering if we even need resources or wondering if you can give resources, man, this is 5-6 years tight. No off the wall, the world's going to end on this day. No, hey, you know, you can't get access to this. We gave everything. We just started the university for those who want to join the university, have more of a curriculum base of what the knowledge is, and so that we can halfway stay afloat. But for those who really just want to get into knowledge, you just got to listen to these videos. There's literally hundreds of these videos, each talking about something to guide you along this path through this maze and talk yourself down from suicide. Basically, if in this direction that we're going with buying into this falsehood of this sub-matrix that they've built is basically driving everyone into a suicidal state because of the clock that it's on, which is based on these Abrahamic traditions, which are part of the original programming system of the Sorcerer Kings. So when you want to basically eject out of that and get closer to Eden, get closer to all your hypersensitivity so you can begin to comprehend all knowing, then you have to choose to put this down. You can't focus on this. They say you can't focus on two major things at the same time because one is going to lose more power than the other. So focus on yourself. That's it.